Today we're talking to Khalil's studio about his journey as an artist, aspiring architect, and content creator on YouTube. He served as a visual arts teacher in a primary and secondary school, and his ambition is to bring the Caribbean art scene to viewers and build a stronger community of artists and craft persons. In the show notes, I've included the links to his YouTube channel and Instagram page. So if you're into art and you want to support his work, feel free to head on over and click the subscribe button. Tell me how you got started as an artist and the journey that brought you to YouTube in July 2022.
It goes back to that kind of generic story that every artist seems to have. I can remember drawing from an early age, like 3 years old. I remember drawing. I remember my mom giving me coloring books. And for all of my life, I just remember this very deep desire to draw, to paint, to create, to sculpt, to make things. That has never left me. Going into secondary school, I studied visual arts. I became very interested in it. I started to research different artists like Jackie Hinkson, fell in love with him, fell in love with Che Lovelace, Bosco Holder, just to name a few local artists. The greats like Cezanne and Michelangelo. I was always an artist. I think I was born an artist. I was born someone with just the desire to create and make things. I studied visual arts at UWI. I did the certificate program there. I could say I kind of hit a crossroad where I didn't know, kind of like you, trying to become a writer and not knowing how possible that was. I maybe shied a bit away from my dream of being a full-time artist. I studied architecture instead, which still kind of appeals to the design aspect of art, and it's still a creative field. But I could safely say no, maybe I shied away a bit from my dream of being an artist at that point. Starting this YouTube channel was bringing that dream back. So really wanting to be an artist and realizing that architecture could have only filled so much of the void that I have for creating and really desiring to paint and to be a maker. It could only let me fill so much of that void. Kind of getting burnt out a bit in architecture and really just desiring a bit more for myself. I was inspired to start the YouTube channel to, again, be an artist. And I would say making those videos, as I've spoken about in many of the videos, that I feel more like an artist making those videos than I've ever felt like in my life. Making these videos has really shown me that it's not even just painting or just drawing or just sculpting that makes me an artist, but it's literally in everything that I do.
It's curious to hear what you're saying there about, you're jumping into YouTube and you're realizing that this is one of the ways that I could express myself as an artist. Just to touch briefly on my own experience as a writer. Well, I didn't make it as a full-time dream, but then I jump over into YouTube. I'm making these videos and it kind of started by accident. I'm working in a different, what's the right word for it? Like a medium?
Yeah.
I have a different medium that I'm getting my work out there. But when I sit and I do an episode or Red Wall News, whether it's political satire or a family vlog, whatever form it takes, that I'm applying the writing. So it's kind of like me keeping my hand in. Your bio on YouTube defines you as an artist and an aspiring architect. I always get trouble with that word, but I don't know why.
Some people say architect, but it's architect.
I think I might be able to pronounce that a little bit easier. So what makes someone an artist but an aspiring architect? I can't even say that one. Or a writer, but an aspiring YouTuber.
It's been something that I've been trying to figure out as well. So on my own channel, I've been doing interviews with artists, trying to understand what really defines an artist as an artist. So one of the questions I would ask each of them is, what makes them an artist? And it's interesting to hear kind of the different train of thought, but they're all kind of just based in making work, being creative. And again, it kind of goes back to remember when I spoke about maybe remembering that I was drawing at 3 years old. Most of them just have this desire in them to create. And it goes to me beyond financial reward. It goes to me beyond making it into a living, about a livable, making a profit off of it. It's just this desire in each one of them to create works. It comes down to this deep desire in us to create work or to output work or to imagine the world in a different way. In the realm of architecture, there's this more rigid idea of how to become an architect. So you do your bachelor's, typically like 4 years, then you do your master's for 2 years. Then you intern under an architect for another 2 years. So that's 8 years. And then you do an exam. And then once you pass that exam, you're then given license to be an architect. So in the real world, there's just more drama to become or to give yourself the title of architect versus, I guess, artist is not something where you have to have documents to say I'm an artist, where if you want to be an artist, you could just claim that identity. I guess it's easier to claim that identity. And Trinidad isn't the easiest place to sell paintings. It isn't the easiest place to really just become an artist. It takes quite a while. I guess anything, it takes quite a while to be accomplished. Maybe in a quick summary, I was inspired to start this YouTube channel. And I could say even before being inspired to start the channel, I would have been someone before coming to Christ would have never saw myself on camera, would have never had the kind of confidence to make these videos and be so vulnerable in some of them. I was able to kind of find my identity in Christ and really find confidence within myself and Christ in me.
Is art a divine gift?
My gift is something divine. From the videos I've made, I have to say yes. And from the interviews I've done, I have to say yes because it was in me before I even knew what it was.
You've taught visual arts to young minds. I'm thinking about my children and their desire to create art. You spoke about some of this, whether it's comics, scribbling on the walls with crayons. And I'm curious about the responsibility parents have when they recognize an artistic impulse in a child. Does it go beyond saying, hey, you do a good job there? Does it involve constructive criticism? What does that responsibility include? And how did your parents nurture your artistic impulses?
My mom actually spoke to me about wanting to do a video on that. So maybe this is a reminder to say, Mom, let's sit down and do it.
All right. So, and you all need to go over to Khalil's channel in the show notes and you could click on it and see that
Hopefully
video.
We have that video done next month.
So don't reveal the mystery of it then.
She would tell me the story of maybe when I was 2 years old. I don't remember the incident, but she would tell me when I was 2 years old, I was just drawing sometime in her work or something. And this lady walks up to her and just like, this guy could real draw. Your son could real draw. And she was like real bigging me up. I don't remember it, but Mom is telling me the story of like, yeah, he could real draw. And I guess that in that moment, she's always spoken about like realizing the potential that I could have in drawing, painting. And from then she's been able to kind of nurture that. So she has been the most supportive person in my art career. Anything that I desire to do, like she tells the story differently from me. I don't know if I just chose to remember it like this, but I was studying at QRC for A-levels. I was in lower 6. And I wasn't happy because I was studying physics, pure maths, art, and comm. And I just remember focusing strictly on art. Like I didn't care about physics. I didn't care about pure maths. And I guess maybe I didn't realize how unhappy I was, but she, being the outside person, being my mother, could see that I just wasn't happy. And I remember walking to lessons a day and she just calls me and she's like, don't bother about lessons, go home. And I'm like, happiest day of my life, I don't have to go to lessons, yeah. And she tells the story in that I made a decision to leave QRC to pursue the visual art certificate at UE. That's not how I remember it. To me, she did all the research and she found the path for me to study art. Because my idea was I could go to school, I could, like Form 6 was the thing to do. I didn't realize that I could have just done something else strictly on art. Like I just assume, you go to A-levels and you get your passes and whatnot. So she realized that, again, like there's some creative process in this guy. There's some creative output that he desires that he's just not able to fulfill in what he's doing. Because I would spend most of my time in the art room. I really didn't care about physics and pure math. So she tells the story in that I found the visual art certificate and I decided that I wanted to do that. I don't remember that at all. I remember her just telling me, don't bother to go to lessons, and she kind of figuring that out for me. So, and that's just like one of many moments where my mother has probably realized even before I did, kind of how unhappy I was pursuing something when I really wanted to pursue art.
So you didn't go the traditional route of the E-levels?
No, I never finished. I dropped out in like January. I remember it was just before my birthday. So I just dropped out of school. I didn't tell that part, but
your mother is cool, right? Big up, moms.
I literally just remember walking from by my granny. She calling me because I'm walking to lesson. She's like, just go home. She goes with me into QRC to be like, yeah, he's done. And I never finished lower 6. And that was January. I started UE in September.
Did that move of not doing A-levels, did that at any point kind of come back to haunt you? Let me say, like when you decided to study, is Jamaica you studied in?
Yeah, I studied at UTech, Jamaica. It didn't. I don't regret. That's one of the best decisions of my life
All right.
to let go of that.
I look forward to that video with your mom. How does art and the knowledge of these elements enhance a basic human experience? See, for example, a walk along a beach or a river, or observing children draw or build model houses.
That might be a tough question.
That's a tough question because okay. So here's what, right? I'm really thinking about the experience of me walking. I am not given to consciously thinking about art. I think I may have latched on to certain principles that I maybe heard or saw in people who make videos or whatever. But I'm wondering if I go for a stroll along the beach or I walk around Eddie Hart and there are elements that I've studied them so much, I've reflected on them so much that maybe this walk around the park where we're making 3 or 4 laps will suddenly become something that is a bit more interesting. Is it at the forefront in these elements of art because they're so ingrained in you that as you walk around, as you travel through, as you walk into a cinema to go and watch Black Panther, that there are certain aspects that stand out?
Definitely. And that's something I've been realizing more and more making the videos. So like I've given the example of going to the beach, where in my younger days, I didn't like going to the beach. But when I started to actually maybe think about more along the lines of the experience that I had. So I mentioned when I go to the beach, it's something that engages all your senses. So you're able to smell the salt water burns your eye, you're able to feel the salt, you hear the sizzling. So going to the beach now is like one of the best experiences for me because I'm able to engage all my senses. As much as you have this desire to create, it's always treated like a hobby, or, the higher ups kind of treat it like a hobby. Even though your parents might nurture it, it's always seen as like, yeah, you could do it as a hobby, but okay, you could become an architect, you could become a lawyer, you could become a doctor. So one of my simple goals is just to make it a little bit easier for the next generation to really be able to see themselves as an artist and to be able to pursue art as a career and actually make it as an artist. So in the interviews that I've been doing, I've been asking, again, the artists to can identify what they see as an artist or what makes them an artist, hoping that it resonates with somebody else who might have that thinking, a younger person who might have that, or older person who has that thinking. So they're able to see someone who is in the art scene, someone who claims to be an artist, having the same ideas as them, so they could realize, well, that makes me an artist too. So that's one of the small goals. Another goal was, I don't know if you remember Derek Walcott, and he would have been an avid art critic in Trinidad and Tobago and a well-respected one. And I wasn't there for his time in any real way, but I read back on his articles and his critiques and stuff, and I found them very powerful. And I feel like it's something that we lack here now. Like after Derek, no one really stands up and say, bro, your work is not good. Here's what to do. Or, you give proper critique. And I think we've gotten very soft. People will just go to a gallery and it's like, yeah, your work is great. And no one is able to sit down and be like, no, this is not good, or this is good. And why is this good, or why is this not good? So another goal is trying to bring discourse back to the art communities. Yes, there's discourse happening where people might come up to the work and they're having little chats and stuff like that. But how impactful, I kind of wonder how impactful that is versus like, instead of having a show, or well, besides having a hung show, maybe an artist is in a position where he's really battling a body of work. And when I say battling a body of work, I really mean battling. Like probably as someone who doesn't paint, doesn't understand what I mean by battling work, but it's heart, sweat, and tears. Like sometimes you're fighting, like not physically punching out the painting, but you're having emotional battles with pieces. So if a painter, sculptor, whoever is battling a piece of work and they really find it hard to get over the hurdle, can they just come to the gallery and say, hey, I would love to have a pin-up and get some critique from my peers or get critique from my higher-ups and create discourse about the work, and they could come and critique the work, not to just be bad, but to really help the person maybe overcome a hurdle. That kind of draws from my experience in architecture school. So that's why I also don't regret going to architecture school, where we had critiques every other week or every week or so. The best critiques were sometimes the most brutal critiques. 9 times out of 10, it was improving the works. I realized my best final presentations came from when I got a horrible interim critique. And if I had a good interim critique, I became so maybe comfortable that I just didn't even push myself for the final critique.
See, for instance, I wanted to use particular colors. You have a jersey with particular colors that you have. And if I was to say, I think that this jersey would look a lot better if you had a little bit more red and the pink and you get rid of that yellow. I don't know if there's a jersey that you make, right?
Mm-hmm.
But say, how does it... Does that move you away from your true self and your...
I would take that example of you just suggesting different colors. I would go back to the studio and just try those colors and see. Because it's not going to hurt me to try what you've suggested. Like if I battle in a piece and I can't overcome it, am I going to just stay in that place of wanting to do exactly what I want to do and maybe battle forever? Or am I going to take some sort of feedback, some sort of criticism and try it with a grain of salt? That might be rubbish. I might try that and it might be rubbish, but it might be exactly what I needed to get out of my headspace to then see the work in a different light and build on it. Be open enough or be in a space where you could get feedback from people knowing that they might have more experience than you, knowing that they might have your best interests at heart, knowing that they want to improve you. You have to be in that headspace to be able to take it. I'm not saying that you tell me to make those changes and I just take that, I do it, and I present that. It's kind of taking it back with a grain of salt to see, I'm one person. I could only have so many thoughts. You as another person could have thoughts about my work. How do I incorporate that? How do I try to see what you are trying to see in my work? And maybe I do it and it's garbage. Maybe I do it and the most profound thing in the world, but if I don't allow somebody else to give their input into it, then I will just, again, it kind of goes back to this being very self-indulgent, where you need that criticism to grow.
You're absolutely right, because I think every, whether you're an artist or a video creator, whatever you're doing, that you need to have this kind of trusted pool of resources. I can think about my own experience with Red Wall News, and you're doing political satire. And there are a number of people, and they're subscribers in some cases, that you could lean on them and you could just run, you might put a draft video, upload it to YouTube so that they could give you. So that's a good that's a wonderful reminder that you have a strong support system, and it may not be able to save a particular project, like what is the last video you published, but you could take that knowledge and move forward with it and, create better products for people, art forms and whatnot. So Khalil, here's what, we've been speaking for about 48 minutes so far, right? And we haven't even touched on your YouTube journey. So would you like us to take a little bit of a break and we'll come back for our part 2, or you just want to keep going?
We can take the break.
We can take the break?
Yeah.
All right. So if you're listening to this, what you could look out for is part 2 of this podcast. Remember, in the show notes, you'll find the link to Khalil's channel. And thank you very much for listening.